All right, welcome. This is a review of a recently released Mongoose Traveler product called the World Builders Handbook. I think I found it on RPG, Drive-Through RPG, June 30th. It came out. I saw it a few days later and immediately scarfed it up because actually this is a new upgrade, whatever, I don't know, call it, of a World Builders Handbook that was created for MegaTraveller back in the 80s, which is a very detailed system and world definition generating system. And if you look at my previous recordings, I've used this one, the World Builders Handbook, to generate the Qatari system mainly. That's the one where my campaign has been in, and was able to do it in you know, uh, extreme detail, I would say. So this one, the World Builders Handbook here, is an update of it, and I've succeeded finally in skimming through it. There's a lot of material, 258 pages. And there's a lot of similarities and probably improvements from this original World Builders Handbook that came out. Now, another one that kind of parallels it, not all the way down to planetary systems, but at least the system level, is part of the Deep Space Exploration Handbook. I think it's book 4 of the Great Rift set, which also has parallel stuff on system generation, star generation, moons, planets, but this one goes in a lot more detail. But I'll have this up also just as a comparison when we get to yep, here we go, exploring the stars and interstellar. And I've used this also um, for my operations here. Let me get down to where I started using it. Rogue here, and then expanded star system creation. So we're going to see this takes it even further, uh, but we'll take a look at that. And this has a lot more. So just like I said, I've skimmed through it so far, but there is so much here. I'm going to have to take this in chunks and work through it. But this fits in perfectly with my campaign. The ISS Intrepid has now jumped to a new system that needs to be surveyed, and I'm going to use this new resource now to actually start working through over the next few videos, over the next few weeks, put this through its paces, hopefully come up with some automation and convert it some recording way. Been using Excel spreadsheets. I think I can still get away with that for a very detailed here. And that's kind of my philosophy on the campaign. I'm kind of doing it for the characters and what's going on and, you know, the interactions. And we saw that in the previous videos, running into the Surin Empire and all sorts of random stuff happening. But this they have an intro. They talk about the pedigree or the history of this book, referencing back to the Scout book from the original Traveller. Classic Traveller Book 6 had good stuff. There was a Grand Survey, Grand Census that came out by Digest Group, World Builders Handbook. Also, T5 had some detailed, Traveller 5 had some detailed stuff. They do make a remark now that when this stuff was written, we had no idea if there were planets out there. Now, 40 years later, we do know there are planets, and we can leverage that knowledge to make this more realistic. And here's the reference to the book 4 of the Deep Space Exploration Handbook. Rules for detailing the rest of the star system here. Methodology structure. And again, they do say you don't have to use all of this. You can use enough of this for your campaign, but I'm a little OCD, and this is, of course, a Traveller Scout campaign, so I'm going to put this thing through its paces here. They do mention 3 methods to work through this book. And the big 2, I would say, are the expanded method and the continuation method. And the one I'm going to use first is the continuation method. And what that means is if you look at my star system chart, you kind of generate some information about the main world in a system, which I do have for a lot of my systems I already have. So that gives me some information going into the process. The expanded method is basically you assume nothing about the system and you just create it from the ground up, and hopefully you'll generate somewhere in there a main world candidate. So it goes into a little more detail. But I'm going to use a continuation, and then there's a shortened version here, categorization method. Okay. Talk about the dice. Base units, good stuff. They expand hex code. Hexadecimal is something that only goes up to 16. But you can expand it and use the whole alphabet. Holy smoke. Instead of putting, two-digit numbers in, we're using letters in their place, and apparently that'll go all the way up to base 33, whatever that's going to be called. Yeah, and again, you're not tied to this. This is not a straitjacket. And then just like in the World Builders Handbook here, I don't think they had a table of contents here. Yeah, they just jump right into forms. But they do talk about right before the Imperium was formed, the split. You kind of got one portion that does the classic exploration, another portion that does internal surveying, because there's so many systems and planets within the Imperium, they got to stay on top of them. And there is also a bigger division in the Imperial Scout Service of the admin kind of, here we go, we got it right here, they talk about it. You get the bureaucracy, appropriately named, and the field. And the bureaucracy kind of is the back office, admin, tracking detached duty office people, which we've run across the Endeavor with Captain Astaire is part of this group, I'm going to say. Technical Services Office, and then this is kind of gray here, the Operations Office, so the scout base that we're leaving from has these in place, the bases, the maintenance, etc. Then we come down to the field and we've got the Exploration Office and the Survey Office. So this is our group, they're in the Exploration Office, they're exploring new systems. The Survey Office is internal mapping, constantly doing here. Then we do have a comms office, the whole expression section of the Imperial Scout Service also. So that's kind of giving you that general organization there. They talk about survey operations here. This is, I'm gonna use this one now actively. They define survey types. We're going to see forms in this for each survey type for a system and how in depth it goes. They even have a class 0 survey at the end I'm going to use too, but class 1 survey gets that remote information one day. And then class 2 is what my scout's going to start on, barring the unforeseen. Now that they're at the edge of the system, spend a week, locate all significant planets, moons, planetoid belts, deploy probes at Nestway. Okay, and then we'll consider, depending on what we find in the main world as we flush it out, we could come in and actually do a landing on the main world, depending on what's found, if there's intelligent life, etc. Won't know that until we've done these other 2 surveys here. And of course, we will have to come in system far enough to find a gas giant and hopefully have better luck refueling than we did the last time we did that. So probably going to go all the way to a class 3 survey, maybe 10 weeks, 3 weeks, 5 weeks. We got a few more systems to check, but we're going to go through this methodically, put it through its paces here. Survey index is a way to classify a system to say how far it's been surveyed, to what level. And like I said, maybe we'll get to class 3 will be a survey index 8 or survey index 6, kind of general there. And then they go into now starting big picture of the system, figuring out the primary star type. You see it's a die roll with modifiers. If you roll snake eyes, you get a special system. And we'll figure that out, but they go into detail with that. Here they don't go into as much. You see here, just comparing it to the deep space exploration, and there's nothing wrong with this system. This is a little higher level here. But we're going to get the primary star types. We're going to get subtypes, peculiar, multiple stars. That can add some complexity. We're talking about star mass and temperature, diameter, luminosity. This information will work later as we determine orbits and habitable zone, etc. Really detailed here. And then we've got our formulas. They've got a nice thing at the end of this, a checklist. Fast. They've got alternate methods they throw in every once in a while. This is getting pretty detailed. And then we got unusual and peculiar objects you could find. white dwarfs, pulsars, neutron stars, black holes, protostars, potentially could be generated. And then we get into the complexity of if you end up with a system with multiple stars, wow, you have to figure out if they're companion stars with another star, are they close, are they far? And then this will make the orbit determination pretty involved later as we figure that out. And speaking of orbit, here we go. Going to figure out what's at what orbit. And they have your codes here, a lot of codes for that. Distances, calculation, fractional orbits, yeah, eccentricity. Wow, this is like astronomer level almost. And again, of course, if I'm just running a campaign for characters and players, I don't know if I'd really go to this depth, but well, I'm going to go for it. And then they always end each one by the actual Imperial Scout Service procedure. And they have forms. Here's our Class 0 survey, which I'm going to start off with kind of at a distance, and then the Class 1 survey we'll look at from that before. And then they put in examples, which is good. 3 examples, 2 systems, and then our system, Sol Terra. And here's the forms. I got to look at these and decide. Yeah, you can tell this is I'm assuming, yeah, -0, so this is a Survey 0 form. So that's probably the first thing I'm going to do because this could have been filled out from the previous system or from a distance. So I'm going to do the Class 0. I'm going to figure out how to convert this here. And then here they give you the example. Now this becomes a Class 1 survey, a little more detailed. And basically you've mapped out the stars and where they are. This thing is full of stars. Again, and that's our Class 1 form. Here's another example, Corella. And then here's Terra. Here's our system. Obviously we only have 1 star. And since our star is a reference point, you're going to see stuff like mass is a 1.0, luminosity is a 1.0. Third orbit is started with the habitable zone. Yeah, that's where we are, the third orbit. So this doesn't necessarily mean there's a planet there. This is where the habitable zone is, where potentially we're going to put the main world if we previously generated it, or we're going to look for main world candidates. So we've got stars, and gets it down to just 2 pages. Planetary bodies. This is okay. I mean, it gives you a simplified way to do that, or orbits, main world, generate worlds. But this obviously goes in a lot more detail, and this is the biggest section. I think it goes all the way. Well, this or the next. No, the world generation is the biggest section, but now we have to figure out what objects are in the system and what their orbits are. And this can get pretty intense. Planetoid belts, gas giants, terrestrial planets, single star systems easier than if I got multiple star, then it becomes harder. Total worlds, alternate method there. Habitable zone, figure that out. It's a function of temperature, luminosity, and distance. Makes sense. And then you figure out how to place the worlds. First, if you got multiple stars, you're going to have to place them first in orbits. If you only have 1, you can skip that. And then you figure out the baseline number. If it's a high baseline number, they're all packed in. Low baseline number, they're all outer systems and cold. And then the habitable zone is where either the previously generated main world or where you're going to look for your main world later to be placed. Baseline orbit, how to do it, what are the specific rules of less than 1, greater than the number, and then they get in a little more detail. They describe them. So if you end up in these, you could be temperate or you could be cold. System spread. Are there empty orbits? Potentially. I have an orbit area, but it's empty. That gets factored in also. We got a little table for that. Normally 9 or less. There aren't any. Anomalous planets. Okay, I got that word out. Could be a planet on a random orbit, eccentric orbit. And again, 9 or below, you don't have that, but you could have some. Retrograde orbit, Trojan orbit, etc. Here's ours. It looks kind of like 9. Pluto, which is some debate on whether it's a planet or not nowadays. You see that's on a different orbital plane. And we place our worlds. And then based on the mass, the size of the star, I think, and what orbit and distance, you can figure out what their year is or what their rotation period is. And now we start digging into world size. We talk about moons. And I think they even have, see, here's a short one page on moons over here. But now they figure out the quantity of moons. Here's our Z example, broken out, size roles, and the actual code. So that's going to be helpful as I work through the significant moon sizes and then the profiles. And here we go, main world candidate. Okay. If I've already got one generated, continuation, I'm going to place it. If I don't, I'm going to look at what I have and decide what could be the main world. And then we end with, hey, this is now a class 2 survey. That's what we're going to be doing here. So this is our class 2 survey we're going to be doing. And here's a class 2 and 3 combined form. Survey 3, we're actually digging down a little more into stuff. We see the stars here, and now we see the objects in the system and their details. Again, I'm going to have to convert this, but here's our class 2-3 survey form, which will guide us. We got our examples for the Z system, and then they even map this out for you. Corella. And then our soul survey. And here we do. We see Mercury, Venus, Terra, Mars, asteroid belt, Jupiter, Saturn, some notes, codes, etc. Okay, so now it's kind of like a combined form. I'm going to master form, and of course here's our wonderful solar system. And then this is, I would say, the biggest. This goes to like page 140, so we're looking at like 70 pages of now going world by world. Now, would I do this for every planet in the system? If it's automated, maybe, but this probably is how you can deep dive the main world. Starts with world size, composition, density, and then we get all sorts of formulas here. Planetoid belts, belt resources, so we're starting to build an economy here. Belt significant bodies here, we're just talking about a planetoid belt. Significant moons and rings. Yeah, moons and rings, yeah, continuation method. Moons could be things, or you could have gas giants with big moons that end up being places there's colonies too. Moon orbit, period of the moon, and we're talking about atmosphere, so we're kind of unpacking in more depth. Runaway greenhouse, nice. Tainting, etc. Atmospheric pressure, scale height. Not even halfway through yet. Look at this. And they give you that. That's a lot more detail here. We're probably going to have exotic. Yeah, I kind of really skimmed through this. Atmosphere composition. Holy smoke. Exotic atmosphere. Corrosive, insidious atmospheres. Nice. Keep going here. I don't know why they threw this in. This is gratuitous. Why are you taking this mask off? Unusual atmospheres. Ooh, and of course ask that critical question, what color is the sky? I guess we can figure that out. Habitable zones, hot atmospheres, cold atmospheres. Yeah, we're going to dig into this. This is going to keep me busy for a while. It'd be nice to automate as much as possible of this. Hydrographics. Unpack that. That's how much liquid. And then you start getting surface distribution. How much water, how much land, what it takes. Continents, how many continents. Ooh, you can have exotic liquids as an optional rule. How long is the day? Good to know. Solar days. Tilts. Axial tilt. Tidal lock. Talking about moons and how the moons affect that. Wow. Important. Advanced temperature rules. Nice. Greenhouse. Albedo, I think that's a scientific designation here. So we're seeing a lot of high and low, axial tilt factor. Wow. Additional temperature scenarios you can have. Calculating sunlight portion in hours. Okay. How big is the thing in the sky? How bright? That's talking about the sun. That's interesting. Don't stare at it. Um, and here they're kind of starting to map out the temperatures and the based on location on the world. Seismology, depending on how young are you having earthquakes, tidal stress, native life forms. Okay. Again, we're stressing here native, not alien necessarily. Um, biomass rating. Yeah, we got taints, different things. So we're talking about native life. Biocomplexity. Wow. Biodiversity. Native sophants. If the world's biocomplexity rating is 8 or above, determine if native sophant, meaning intelligent life, how we can figure out if, first off, if there's native intelligent life. That's the key. Native intelligent life. Instead of a simple random die roll, we can use that. Resources, there we go again. We did see that, I think, at Pocket Empires. Now we can incorporate that. Habitability rating. Final main world determination. And this is where if you haven't done, you've already generated the main world from the core rules, you can go through here and evaluate what should be the main world. And then, guess what? We can map it out, and here's our generic mapping thing here. I think each hex is 1,000 clicks. Yeah, 1,000 kilometers. And then each hex can be broken down into this hex kind of thing here. So you can get pretty detailed there. And then as usual, we end this. This is going to be a class 4. There we go. That's if we find an interesting world. If the main world is already kind of defined and then we flesh it out is worth the visit, this is the form we'll be filling out for that. Class 4 survey. That's as far as we'll go. Here's an example. And then they give you the details here. So again, it looks like all the stuff we've seen before. Here's the stars, here's the objects, and here's our class 4. Yeah, this still lists as class 2, 3. Okay, they're just listing the 2 and 3 as a reference. And here's our class 4, and they kind of do it a P for partial. And we do see the Corella, and here's Corella secondary, I guess. And then this is us, 2, 3, and then this is Earth, I guess. Dated Solomani Rim. I mean, they're using the traveler terms for it in the Imperium. But this is our world. And then, hey, if you've got a civilization there, depending on it, here's native sophant modifications. If you found out previously there is a native intelligent life, they give you modifications here. And then, yes, they do work through in a little more detail. Population, concentrations, urbanization, major cities, holy smoke, major city populations, additional cities, unusual cities in the tech level, balkanized world population distribution, that would be us right now, multiple nation states, government type, and again, this is similar, we've seen that in the core rules, government structure. And again, you're going through this if you have intelligent life. It could be native, or it could be, as we see, some kind of empire, colony, etc. Factions, we unpack those. Secondary world governments, if you have more than one inhabitable world. That's interesting. Law level. Again, going a little more detail here. Economic law, law level effects. See that chart. Law level profile. Yeah. Okay. Going through. Make law, private law penalties, secondary world law levels. Look at that. And then they unpack technology levels all the way up to 16. Quality of life, electronics, manufacturing, medical, environmental. And you have to determine the tech level here. And then here's transportation and military. So a little more detail on tech levels. I think we are If I read this right, we are 7, maybe trying to get into 8. Yeah, we're 7. And then we see high-speed train, VTOLs. We got that space plane. Yeah, we got that assault rifle autocannon. Oh my, we're almost getting the Tesla to take us to tech level 8. But early grav, stun, precision, hypersonic jets. I don't know. Well, it could be 7 or 8. But then it moves up here, and you can determine the tech level and the jump level. You've got some minimal sustainable tech levels depending on atmosphere, upper and lower tech levels in the planet, so you could have a spread of tech levels on a planet. And then they go a little bit more into the military tech levels, personal, heavy military, secondary world tech level guidelines. Then we got the culture. Interesting. Yeah. Unpack that. Militancy. We've seen this. I've seen that in Pocket Empires. So it's somewhat paralleling that, it seems. Religion, economics. I've seen this before. This was in the core rulebook, that chart. Resources, labor, efficiency. Hopefully that can feed right into Pocket Empires. Government modifiers. Yep. This is a nice collection now of multiple sources here we're seeing. Or at least I'm beginning to see. Here we got our starports. Figure out how advanced the starport is, spaceports, free ports, port capacity, starport traffic. Wow, really? Yeah, going more detail on the starport capabilities. Okay. And then the military. Interesting, we've got wet Navy versus space Navy. So we're somewhere there. We've got our Space Force, but wet Navy, you build a ship, you're good. You build anything that floats. Air Force, close support, what tech level? It's probably World War I. System defense. Yeah, we're almost there. 7 plus. And then this is space, Marine, Space Navy. Minimum tech level. And then they go a little into the branches here and some details on the different militaries. And then they talk about bases potentially on there. Corsair base, nice. That's pirates. Travel zones, green, amber, red. Yep, talk about that. That's a roll. And now we end again with procedural. This is a class 4 survey. First contact there. So they call this a 4-part C. Major cities, all sorts of details there. And here's another one about economy, going into more detail here. And then they do a cool example. Cool example based on the systems they've been generating. That's going to hopefully be helpful here. And then we got some special circumstances. Oh my, you can explore empty hexes on the sector map. Kind of scary. Hopefully you have enough fuel, but you may find things there. Rogue neutron stars, black holes, white dwarf primaries, brown dwarf primaries. Rogue gas giants, that would be helpful in an empty hex. Rogue terrestrial worlds, wow. Rogue small bodies. Or it may just be empty. Empty hex, I guess this is a survey index you got to get to find them. And then they talk about detection based on your tech level, etc. I don't know why I guess it's a possibility, or you do a misjump and you end up in an empty hex. This could be helpful. That'd be a good way to attack an enemy from a different direction. They assume it's an empty hex, but you found a rogue gas giant there. Empty hex arrival variance, yeah. M-drive efficiency in deep space. Then they talk about the different things. You could find protostars and proto-systems, just forming primordial systems. That's the term they use. Brown dwarfs, dead stars, white dwarfs, neutron stars, black holes, and you can pack those out. Nebula, artificial worlds. Oh wow, Dyson spheres, ring worlds. And they tell you it's deck level. Wow, Dyson Sphere tech level 29. Let's see, Ring Worlds 26. That's pretty up there. I think what we're mainly going to see, small ring moon, tiered world, etc. An empty hex, home to a brown or white dwarf, may have marginally habitable planets. Rogue worlds can act as refueling points or convenient gravity wells on journeys otherwise too far and dangerous to cross in a single jump. So there may be some advantage if you've got a gap to doing that, if you carry enough fuel. And they've got their form for whatever you find. And then we're coming here to the end. They add some additional equipment. If you looked at the original World Builders, they had a bunch of equipment in here, but it was the basic equipment too. Yeah, good list. So this is just adding new kind of stuff: survey pod, covert operations pod, robots. Okay. Wow, a really small microspy. It's only 3 millimeters. That's really small. Remote environmental sentinel. Here's a pod droid. They talk about software that is used here and how it can affect, how much it costs and how much it can affect it. Hazardous environment exploration boat. Yep. Survey cutter module. And then we're at the glossary. Now there is one more thing I'll show here before I end this video. Yeah, here's the checklists. I'm going to be referencing these. So once you get somewhat familiar, you don't have to keep going paging through the book. Let's see if there's an automation capability. I'll have to look at that. But then they go through, yeah, this is a collection of all the formulas here and the different checks. And then they end with this quick survey guide for exploration. Consider this a class 0 survey. And I think I'm going to do this first. Go through this and you can get a quick picture of the system, and then we'll be in system and we'll do our class 1-2 survey of the system. And then some designer notes at the end. And an index, always helpful, not big, but it's there. It's reasonable. So if we go all the way back to the beginning, though, this looks like a good resource. Yeah, I think I'm going to spend the next few weeks and/or a number of videos, basically just you know, so you can't eat the whole cow at once, so you have to eat it a hamburger at a time. I'm going to kind of just spend my time going through this methodically, barring the unforeseen random events from my solo mythic generator, which I'm hoping there won't be any. And we're going to work through this and see how it works, see how a good way to record it, probably in a spreadsheet of some form. And then if there's automation chances here to automate some of these calculations, so it could be more usable, not as taking as much time. So anyway, I was very excited to see this. Fits right into my campaign. Can't wait to deep dive this and let my scouts actually do what they're paid for and what they're trained for. Good bread and butter systems. New product by Mongoose through its paces. If you like, please click like, comments appreciated, and subscribe if you haven't already for the next recording. Otherwise, thanks for listening.